This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse, covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.
Okay, welcome to this week's Safer Than Your Average podcast. This week on the show we've got Joe Meanen, one of the 61 survivors of the Piper Alpha accident, and a safety impact speaker. Joe, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Hello there, my name's Joe Meanen. I'm one of the 61 survivors from the Piper Alpha, living up in Stonehaven, just south of Aberdeen. I do a bit of work presenting my Piper Alpha story to whoever's interested, and it's been quite an eye-opener for myself, and I've found it very good for myself to get this out, and I've had a lot of great response as well.
We spoke a little bit earlier on about the format of the podcast, Joe. We're just going to go right back to the start, starting where you grew up, and tell us a bit about your background.
No problem. I was born in Glasgow, 1958. Stayed in Glasgow, in Brigton in Glasgow, till I was 7 years old. And my sister came along at that time, so we had to, well, I think the plan was always to move out of Glasgow, the slums there. So family moved up to East Kilbride, got a brand new house, Calderwood, East Kilbride, and we stayed there for the next 11 years or so. Went to St Bride's School in East Kilbride. East Kilbride was a great time. Loved my football in East Kilbride. Made a lot of good friends there. But it was great till I got to about 16, 17, and unfortunately in Glasgow and East Kilbride and surrounding areas, there was a lot of young teenage troubles going on at that time, and I left school at 16, which was Christmas time, because you could leave school either Christmas or summertime as soon as you were 16. And I actually got a job with Wiseman's Dairies. I was working for them before I left school, and that carried on for a couple of years. As I said, East Kilbride was a bit of a troubled place, and I met up with a guy through some other guys I know that had been in Jersey and worked the summer season over there. So that year in 1977, I went over to Jersey and had a couple of years over there, working over there, which was great fun, and I started some travel and adventures I had over the years.
What did you do in Jersey, Joe?
I first went over, got a job, just labouring really, landscape gardening, and I got a job in a potato canning factory, which canned the potatoes, the Jersey potatoes, which was good for, well, it was all right, like, you know. And then I eventually got a job for driving, delivering plant hire stuff around about the island, which was great because I'd seen a lot of the different parts of the island. And Jersey was all kind of a tax haven. It always has been a bit of a tax haven. And there was some lovely houses I had to deliver stuff to, whether they were getting extensions built or swimming pools built and stuff like that. So yeah, and great time in the summer because you could get to the beach, and just it was totally different for East Kilbride because everybody was just so friendly. And I've still got friends for there I keep in touch with, and it was great fun.
And then you came back from Jersey, late 70s?
Yeah. Well, in the summer of 78, I broke my leg playing football, ironically, and I kind of lost my job through that. There's no really any social security stuff there. The football team looked after me for a short time, plus a bit of insurance money. But when I was over in Jersey, my mum and dad moved up to Stonehaven, where we are nowadays, and my dad had started work up in Sullenbow. They were building an oil terminal up there, so that was, he started in '78, so he told me he could get me a job up there as a trainee scaffolder. Gave me an idea of how much money they were making up there. It was a bit of a change from one end of the Britain to the other end of the UK, but it worked out fine. I learned my trade as a scaffolder up there. I spent 3.5 years up there before I went offshore in 1982, 82-ish.
Yeah. So you started offshore scaffolding, 82. What platforms did you go to start out with?
I done my first trip on the Dunlin Alpha, which was only two-week trip, and then it was a shell platform, and then I moved to the Brent Delta and spent most of my time there before I just moved about the North Sea with different. Well, it was much the same same scaffolding company, but we worked for different contracts, you know, in the North Sea. I worked on the Ninian, all the platforms on the Ninian field, a couple of platforms on the Forties field, the Bray Alpha, and eventually ended up in Piper Alpha in March. First trip was March 1988.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you started in March 1988, and then the accident with Piper Alpha happened in the July, so you were only on there a few months.
Yeah, well, that was my 5th trip. Yeah. Must have been early March I started. So, time July come round, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. That was my 5th trip, and didn't know too much about Piper Alpha before I went. Wasn't the biggest of platforms, but then soon found out how much oil it was producing. It had a nickname as the monster, I believe, you know, because it was producing so much oil.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the worst platform I've been on for, as in accommodation and food. The guys that worked there wasn't a bad crack. Morale was okay, but the North Sea was they were squeezing the North Sea at the time in the mid to late 80s, and in April '88 we found out there was a new maintenance contractor coming in, taking over towards the end of April, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told that we would all be keeping our jobs if we wanted them. The only thing it would be that we'd have to take a pay cut from $5.20 an hour to $4.90 an hour, and yeah, it was a bit of a blow. But like I say, the North Sea was getting squeezed from all directions. Oil price had taken a big hit in '86, and things were getting squeezed in all directions.
Similar to what's happening at the moment with the COVID-19 situation, that the oil prices dropped quite significantly, and the pressure's on now that they're not making the same amount of money out of a barrel of oil.
No, I think that's correct, but I don't think there's the same pressure from the authorities or the government to keep the money coming in. I think in the '80s, after the miners' strike and everything, and all the turmoil that went on at the time, the coffers that the government had, they were treasury was a bit short of cash, so they were keen to keep the oil revenue coming in as well, so there was a lot of pressure from both the government and the oil companies, which I think suited Occidental just down to the ground,
Yeah. So you went offshore, you've been working in the industry for a while. What kind of training did you get in the lead up to that, Joe, before you went offshore?
Well, as required in legislation, I'd done my offshore survival course, which was done at Robert Gordon's University, was doing it at that time. So I'd done my week's survival course then.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the other platforms you go on, if it's your first time on a platform, you get an induction. Some of them will show you how give you a wee tour of the platform, give you a general idea, but mostly it was left up to the guys you worked with who kept you right and pointed you in the right direction. But you did get an induction. Sometimes we'd have safety meetings on some of the other platforms. Chevron was quite good with that, and EP on the 40s were reasonably good with that. But how superficial it was, I'm not sure, but you had the opportunity to say things and bring things up, but how far it went above that, I'm not too sure.
Mm-hmm. And there was obviously a culture of cutbacks at the time. They were giving everybody a wage cut, so a lot of people would have been potentially in fear for their job. So speaking up maybe wouldn't have been the top of everyone's priority.
Yeah, that's like there, and I say the pay cut that came along affected morale more on the working side of things. I mean, we still had a bit of crack going on the platform, but mostly, work related. You're not going to slog your guts out for £4.90 an hour. And we were at the lower end of the pay scale when it, went up with the different trades. Us and the painters, I think, were around about the same level of pay. So yeah, it certainly work-wise it affected morale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if we move on to talk about the events in July, then can you tell us a bit about how your trip started out first of all, and then talk us through the trip up to the time of the incident?
Yeah, well, it went off in end of June there, and things just kind of progressed as they normally would. You're on a bit of a downer when you go offshore at first. Your crew change day was a Friday. So after the first weekend's passed, you're kind of broke the back of it then, that was the way I looked at it, So only one more weekend to go and then you're on, you're a few days to get home, So everything was just going as normal, but we did, obviously taking on as normal. There was an awful lot of work going on the platform at the time. Knew the Tharas, which was accommodation, bars, plus firefighting, semi-submersible as well. So there was a lot of work going on. We were working, let's say, 15 hours a day, which was a bit of a normal shift for us. But we were up Meanen. We moved up from 9 scaffolders to 15 and then 18. And it was another 3 guys that arrived on the platform that day. So they were pushing to get all the work done or get it all finished as quick as possible.
Yeah. So if we start to progress then into the actual incident, Joe, if you want to talk us through it.
Yeah. Well, on the day we'd finished our 15-hour shift, and we knew the 3 guys 2 other guys I worked with, 3 in a squad. We were all in the same cabin. One of the other guys, it was a 4-man cabin. So a couple of the boys nipped away early to get quick shower, 9:15 or whatever. We had decided we were all going up to watch a movie. It was Caddyshack on that night. It was we only had one more shift to do after that shift finished. That was a Wednesday. We'd be working the Thursday, and then going home on a Friday. So
team of fever, everybody happy, all want to get home.
Yes, we all just ready for getting home. Somebody went up and got cans of Coke and juice or whatever, and some Mars bars and stuff like that. So we headed up to the cinema. And it was Caddyshack, like I say, it was on that night, a comedy, so a bit of light relief for us all. We were all in the cinema. And the cinema was quite busy that night because it was a decent movie. Maybe 30 odd people in there. And 10 to 10, 5 to 10, we could hear some strange noise from outside. And we believe it was the flare booms, and they were they were flaring excess gases off. That's what, you know, somebody said in the cinema, but, you know, we'd never really heard that before. Then it seemed to quieten down again, and everybody a bit of chit-chat, rumbling in the cinema, and a bit of laughter. Yeah, about another 2 or 3 minutes, it came up again. Really high-pitched noises, real high-pitched whistle. And you could, you know, you could sense there was power in there, you know. Bang, there was a huge explosion. The whole platform rocked back forward. Part of the roof of the cinema fell in. There was initial panic in the cinema. People just desperate to get out. But then it calmed down a bit. But what we didn't know once we got out, well, we got into the accommodation, the main accommodation area, as you'll see a photograph there of explosion which occurred in Module C, which was gas conversion module. And the explosion was that powerful, it knocked debris through firewalls that separated Module C and B. Module B was crude oil pipes that, you know, took the oil from Tartan and Claymore, and from the oil it was being drilled on Piper as well. So that fractured some of them oil pipes, which led to intensifying the fire and the black oil smoke that you can see on the photograph. Also, the initial explosion destroyed the control room, which was just slightly, well, it was up above Module C, but it was above Module D, and it was in between Module C and D, and nobody knew that. Nobody knew it destroyed the control room. So once we got into the accommodation, there was still emergency lighting going on, but there'd been no tannoys, no alarms went off or anything, which was very, very unusual. No call to go to muster stations or anything like that. But most of the guys kind of back and forward and made their way down. We thought we'd maybe try and make our way to the lifeboats, but other guys that had been down there coming back were saying, you can't get out that door, there's too much fire and smoke out that door. Try to go over to the east side of the platform, couldn't go over that way, same the guys were saying. So eventually just seemed to elevate up into the galley. And when you do your survival courses, you're always told your first method of evacuation would be by helicopter. But when I got up to the galley, which was just below the heli deck, there was maybe 100 odd guys in there. Emergency lighting was still on at the time, but the smoke was getting more intense. It was very quiet in the dining room, although there was 100 odd guys there, just kind of sitting around the floor, not much getting said. But then the OIM and the safety officer was in the galley also, and somebody shouted at him, "Can you tell us what's happening? Let us what have we got to do?" Because I say there'd be no tannoys, no alarms. The OIM, who I don't hold responsible at all for this because he was out his depth, we were all out our depth, but he'd said that there'd been a mayday sent out, which we found out afterwards there had been a mayday sent out from the radio room, but he said there would be helicopters there within the hour to rescue us. But he didn't know the situation outside. We didn't know the situation outside. Also, just a couple of minutes later, or a minute or so later, I heard somebody else coming in, because I'd get separated from all the guys I was with in the cinema at that point, shouting, "Is there anybody here from Bowden?" which was the drilling contractor on the platform. And somebody shouted, so I thought, oh, I'll shout, "Is there any scaffolders here?" And the guys that I shared the cabin with and that, and some other the scaffolders were round at the back entrance of the galley in the kitchen area where the chefs and cooks would bring their supplies in. There was a back door there. Went round there, they were all sitting on the floor with dish towels, wet dish towels over their mouths. They told me to go and get a dish towel. They're up there on the sink. Went up, turned the tap on, no water, but there was water lying at the bottom of the sink. So soaked the dish towel, got back. The smoke was getting more intense by that point. This was maybe just 12 minutes past 10 at the time. So sat there for a few minutes, asked what was going on, if anybody had heard anything. Said no. Well, they said there'd been a couple of the firefighting team up at the back door with the breathing apparatus on. They had decided to go down, and they said they'd go and try and find out what was happening and come back and let us know. But after 2 or 3 minutes, nothing. The guys weren't coming back. The smoke was getting more intense. You could hear other small explosions happening. You could hear windows breaking. The emergency lighting had gone off. So we thought, well, if we stay in here and anything else happens, we're not going to be in any area where we could do anything for ourselves, be stuck inside.
Yeah.
So we decided, why don't we go up on the helideck and we'll maybe get a better idea of what's happening. So there was about 18 of us sitting around in that area.
Yeah.
So we decided, right, let's go. And as we were leaving, it was about 12, 13 of us decided to go. Just as we were leaving, I was last to leave, and there was another 6 guys there we had done some work for. They were working for a communication company.
Mm-hmm.
And just as leaving, I asked them, you guys not coming with us? And they kind of looked at each other and they said, no, we're just going to stay. We've been told to stay. So left in guys there. We got up onto the helideck. There was a converted container up there, which was converted to the radio room and the helideck landing officers' room, where the guys would work on the choppers, and when the choppers come in with any crew on and crew changed and that. So we got up on top of there because that was the highest point we could get in that area.
Yeah.
The black smoke that you might see in the photograph along there with the oil really fired, that was choking us, but it was coming across in layers, so we could get up and get some breaths of fresh air as it came across.
Yeah, above it.
Yeah. Also, the Tharos had been moving a bit closer, and they had a water cannon on top of one of their crane jibs, and that was actually fanning back and forward. So they were catching that water as well. As a lot of us were just in our evening clothes, no overalls on or survival suits on or anything like that. It was, it just felt great, just a cold shower if you've come off the beach when you've been under the sun too much, and it was just a huge relief. And it really helped me later on, I believe, when the clothes were all wet. So we thought, well, the Tharos is coming a bit closer, maybe we could go over to the west side of the platform, because the Piper had an emergency helideck as well. Mm-hmm. So it was like a double helideck on top there. So we could get right over to the west side of the platform. So the crowd is went down, 12, 13 years. And just as we got over to the west side of the platform, the gas riser from the tartan platform fractured, and it just engulfed the platform. You can see that video on YouTube or whatever. And at that point, just didn't know what had happened. You just knew something horrendous had happened. I myself ran across the heli deck and went across, and there was a radio mast there. And I climbed onto the radio mast and I started climbing up the radio mast. I think it was just through panic, but I didn't feel as if I was panicking. But as the higher I got up, the more the intensity of the heat I could feel. And then I slipped, and then I just thought at that point, I just thought to myself, that's it, I'm dead here. And then I don't know what came over me. It was for something above or just will to survive. But some came and took over what I was doing. So I came down the ladder onto the level below the heli deck, run along to the steps where you would go up onto the heli deck if you were crew changing on the platform, run across the north side of the heli deck on the north side of the platform, had a look over. I could see some water through the flames and smoke, and by this time I had a life jacket on, took the life jacket off, threw it in front of me, took a bit of a run, and there's safety netting around the heli deck and the supports on the safety net. I used them to propel myself off as far as I could. I knew exactly what I was doing, but it was still as if something was making me do what I was doing. I wasn't in control of what I was doing, although I knew exactly what I was doing. And once I'd thrown myself off, and I knew I had to get as far out as I could from the platform, as if I just come back to myself. And the first thing that came into my head was I just thought, what the fuck have I done? And then I felt nothing again after that till I hit the water, which was roughly about 6 seconds it took to cover that distance, which was 175 feet. Hit the water, knew I'd hit the water. Don't know how far I went down, but it was quite a bit. Managed to get back up as quick as I could, back up to the surface. A lot of debris in the water. There'd been a lot of lifeboats and loose impediments that had been blown off the platform, and that second explosion happened. But luckily for me, I missed everything that was there. I managed to get a hold of a life jacket again, which I presume was a life jacket, thrown in front of me. Because it was one of these actually lovely summer nights, and you get in the North Sea, and the sea was quite calm. It had maybe half a metre swell, and the sea was running from south to north that night, so it was taking me away from the platform. So I also got my arm wedged in, which I found out was part of a roof of a lifeboat had been blown off. So I just started propelling myself away from the platform, and then I could see a lifeboat, which was part of this roof of the lifeboat I had my arm wedged in. So I disregarded the stuff I had, swum over to this lifeboat was floating in the water, got across to that. There was still a bit of fire going on in it. Say half the roof of it was missing. But after a minute or so, I managed to climb up, pull myself up into the lifeboat. And that's when I looked back at the platform, and I was just trying to take in what I was, seeing. It was just it was flames from the sea surface to hundreds of feet up in the air, and just more and more explosions. At that point, I noticed, because I only had a polo shirt on that night, that I noticed that I had huge blisters on my arms. Couldn't quite figure out what the reason was for that. Didn't feel any pain or anything at that point. I just didn't realise what blisters were there for. At that point, I heard a fast rescue craft, which had come from one of the supply boats. I went and waved them down, although I believe they were coming towards the lifeboat anyway. got me into the fast rescue craft, and they asked me if there was anybody else that was in the lifeboat. I said no. They lay me down the side of the inflatable boat, and that's actually, I kind of knew I was safe then, and I kind of started going in and out of consciousness then, and it started taking effect on me. My adrenaline had came down, and they took me back to the supply boat, their supply boat, which I think was one of the Maersk boats. And I remember just bits and pieces from then on. I remember them winching me. They must have got me into a stretcher, winched me onto the supply boat. And I don't mind much about being on a supply boat. And I do mind the cranes, the lights from the crane, from the Tharos, when they were transfer me onto the Tharos from the supply boat.
Mm-hmm.
Remember getting into the hospital on the Tharos, and the medical staff had arrived from some other platforms or rigs in the area, and possibly the doctors from Aberdeen as well. I just remember, I think I was going into shock at that time. And I remember them saying, just give me a shot of morphine. And I got a shot of morphine at that point. And just strong stuff, that,
Yeah.
Put me at rest.
And then from there, you were evacuated from the Tharos by helicopter at the hospital in Aberdeen.
Yeah. There is a photograph there also when I arrived back in Aberdeen, and I think it was a Royal Navy helicopter that took me back. I remember getting into the ARI. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of bodies, people, nurses, doctors, just seemed to be organised chaos, but I'm sure they knew what they were doing, and kind of mind bits and pieces through that. And I remember being up in the ward. It was just a 2-man ward where ended up just myself and Roy Carey, another survivor, was in there. But they told me that my mum had been notified that I was a Piper Alpha survivor, and they were on their way in because Stonehaven's only 15 miles or so from Aberdeen. So I just kept myself going till they come in and I seen them, and in the next few days, 3, 4, 5 days, was a bit of a blur back and forward, but
You on quite a lot of heavy painkillers and stuff like that, Joe?
yeah, I had an intravenous painkiller. It was on a drip, on oxygen, catheter in. Yeah, had a nurse by my bed at night for the first 3 nights, 72 hours. Well, over the evening periods, there's a nurse just stationed at the bedside, so it must have maybe still been a wee bit touch and go then, although you don't realise you're.
What was the extent of your injuries, Joe? You were quite badly burned.
Yes. Yeah, mostly, the burns, which I had to get skin grafts. I was told they were full thickness burns, which I believe was down to the flesh. They just took the skin off down to there, and the donor areas were from both my legs. They took the skin for there so they could put it onto my arms. I had superficial burns to my face and my head, black and blue from head to toe from the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But I never broke anything. They thought I maybe dislocated my shoulder and it maybe popped back in again. But no
And just to
breaking.
put that into context for anybody that's from Glasgow, the Finniston crane is 175 feet tall, the same height as the heli deck. So it was like jumping from the top of the Finniston crane into the sea. It's one of the tallest structures along the waterfront and on the Clyde.
Well, we were. It's hard to kind of exactly know what speed it was, but we were told, it'd be between 60 and 70 mile an hour. I've heard different stories about that, but I don't know. It doesn't matter too much to me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm still here, but I know a lot of other guys who jumped from the heli deck and the post-mortems afterwards, they'd broken pelvises, broken arms, broken legs, head injuries, and then maybe ultimately drowned in that case, so I don't know how we were lucky enough to get away with that, because out of the 12 guys, 12, 13 years that went up on the heli deck, I only know there was 3 of us that survived from that area. I don't know if everybody went off the heli deck, but there was only 3 of us that survived that. Yeah, the injuries, the burns, couldn't quite work out where that had happened, but after speaking to the surgeons and doctors, and we went through what happened, the story, or how we got to where we were. The surgeon says probably during the fall, and it was heat radiation, and that's because I had a short sleeve t-shirt on, and my skin was exposed. But I do believe if it wasn't for the water we got soaked from the fire hose of the Tharos, burns could have possibly have been a lot worse if my clothes had been dry at that time, so that was a wee blessing, small mercy in a bigger picture,
The photograph that we're going to show, Joe, there's a documented photograph of you in the hospital with your injuries that a newspaper reporter managed to get into the ward that you were on and take a picture for the paper. So we'll put that up on the screen and let everybody see that. And it's probably one of the only records of people in the hospital from the Piper Alpha disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. I think there was some of the TV people. I think they were in another part of the hospital, in our ward, in the Burns ward, where Thatcher and Hammer came to visit some of the survivors in another part of the Burns unit in Aberdeen. So there's a wee bit of that, and the documentary Fire in the Night, that was all in the hospital.
Yeah. So what happened after that then, Joe? You were probably in hospital for a while after that, maybe 6 months?
No, it was 2.5 months or so, well, sorry. Yeah, about 6, 7 weeks, and then I got out of hospital, but I was travelling back and forward kind of every day to start with for a week or so, and then every other day, and then it went down to 3 days, every third day, and just to get dressings changed and just make sure there was no infection or anything like that, and everything was okay in that sense, Then I had to go myself to get physiotherapy after that, because seemingly your skin shrinks, when you take the skin off your legs and then put on your arms. So I had to get some of my mobility back in my arms and my joints and my wrists and my fingers and that, and anybody that's been through a major injury, some of the hardest part is your rehabilitation and your physiotherapy you've got to go through. It's that can be painful, and there wasn't any painkillers taken at that time either, so yeah. So all in all, it took a good 1.5 to 2 years, I would say, to get through everything. Part of the cosmetic part of the injuries as well, or treatment, was they made these pressure garments for me. And it was just like sleeves on my arms, and I had gloves for my hands, and they were really, really tight, and this was to stop the scarring. They put pressure on your skin to even it out a bit more. So I was wearing, in the summertime, wearing gloves and stuff like that, you know. So that went on for about 2 years. So yeah, it was all something you just had to get through and, you know, get on with it. So,
And it'd have been really difficult mentally after that as well, Joe. What support did you get mentally? Did you get any counselling or any support from the company that you worked for, the oil company that you were contracted to, or from the NHS?
yeah, the NHS was very good in Aberdeen. They had a professor, David Alexander, who was one of the top psychological professors in the country. It just so happened he was based in Aberdeen. And he set up a lot of good support and come and spoke to a lot of us. The hospital had put people in touch with us as well, and social workers. They set up a survivors support group in Aberdeen, which I think was on a Tuesday and a Thursday night. And yeah, I think that helped a lot of the people, you know, a lot of the survivors. It helped them an awful lot. But it didn't really work for me, the survivors group. I don't know if it was because a lot of these guys hadn't got injuries. They got off the platform quite early, which was really good for them. But he had more of a guilt complex, which is perfectly understandable.
Yeah.
It's a sad reflection in a lot of these disasters you hear about, you know, and people do have survival guilt,
Yeah.
and it's a tough thing to cope with as well, you know. So, but yeah, you know, we weren't short, mostly from Aberdeen Hospital, the NHS, and Aberdeen Council. You know, no such. There wasn't so much came from Occidental. I think once they got through their initial couple of weeks after the disaster, then they were wanting to kind of not wash their hands, but they kept a distance from it. Whether it was, you know, a decision that was made higher up to do that or not, you know.
The owner of Occidental, the owner of Piper Alpha, Armin Tamer, flew into the UK, didn't he? He flew into London just after the incident, and he
Yeah,
went to the Houses of Parliament to meet with Margaret Thatcher before travelling to Aberdeen to meet somebody injured, and then left the UK and never returned.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And yeah, there's a couple of strange stories about that because both the government and Occidental Hammer put £1 million in each to a disaster fund, which I'd never heard of before. If you think about in the 80s, all the disasters that happened at the time, and the first one I kind of really remember was the Bradford, the fire in the Bradford stand.
Yeah.
And then you Zeebrugge, you had King's Cross, you had, you know, there's a number of things went on. That's
Called it the century of disaster, didn't they?
had Hillsborough in '89 and that as well. You know, there was so much things going on at the time, but I'd never ever heard of, you know, a government putting £1 million into a disaster fund.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it helped a lot of people out initially, I presume, you know, but.
So there was a big government inquiry after Piper Alpha into the incident called the Cullen Inquiry, and we spoke a little bit earlier on off camera about the Cullen Inquiry and the involvement in it. Do you want to tell us a story about that, Joe?
Yes, well, I started going from the start of it because I really wanted to know what had happened, you know, but it was actually on the other side of Aberdeen for me. At that time, wasn't able to drive because I was still bandaged up and everything. Mm-hmm. So I had to get the bus over. So it was a bit of travel for me. So
how quickly did that start, Joe, after Piper Alpha?
It was in November afterwards. It wasn't long, and we were so lucky. It was Lord Cullen who got put in charge to do, chair the inquiry in that, because at the end of the day, he done a fantastic job as far as I could see, and left no stone unturned, and absolutely slated Occidental,
Mm-hmm.
And the government to a certain extent, and it's all ready, like, available if people are interested in going and reading. There's a short version of the Cullen report, and he didn't mess about. But to be fair to all the oil companies and the government at the time, they took on board all the recommendations. It was 106 recommendations. They were fully implemented, and the most important one was taking the responsibility for health and safety away from, it was with the Department of Energy at the time, which had a conflict of interest, and was the HSC was put in charge of the overseeing of the oil industry in the North Sea, which was a great thing. We all had to go and give our evidence, all the survivors, whether how unimportant or important you were, which position you had on the platform, but we all had to go and do a wee bit, which was a bit stressful, because there was I think it was about 10 sets of solicitors and secretaries and stuff, and representing all the different contractors on the platform, and then obviously Occidental's solicitors and representatives as well, so it was a bit daunting. TV cameras there and news, it was all the news and at that time,
And quite quickly after you'd been through your horrific injuries, you were still recovering at the time, and then having to go to court to give evidence and quite a big trial.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah. Well, you don't really expect to have to go through, and you're, through a work accident or incident or whatever, yeah, it was quite daunting. Same as when we had to go through our own personal injury claims, it was quite daunting. We were put to so many medical examinations and psychological examinations as well for both sides, but we got through all that. We had to get through that, It was unfortunately, it's just one of these things you have to, make yourself get through it for your own benefit.
Mm. So quite a traumatic time in your life, Joe. And then after that, what did you do after all of that had occurred?
Well, I decided I was never going to go offshore again. But what I'd done a fair bit of travelling, and whether it was subconsciously or not, I got myself away from Aberdeen. I had family in Australia, and I had family in Zimbabwe and Africa as well. So I had a 6-month trip away in 91. That would have been. I think I went away in 90 and through 91. So yeah, it was probably beneficial for myself to get away from Aberdeen. So I'd done a bit of travelling for a few years, and eventually, when I did come back to Stonehaven, I packing forward a few different trips. When it was time to settle down again, some friends of mine had opened a hotel or taken over a hotel and refurbished it, and it was doing quite well. So I just started working in the bar in there, which was good. It was good fun, and it was a kind of family business they'd set up, but unfortunately for them, they had a bit of a family bust up. So it ended up I took over a share in the hotel, and we ran that for about 8 years, which was good fun. It was really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyed it, learned about that. They decided they had enough of it, so I had bought them out eventually, But I found it just a wee bit too much to run a hotel myself, and sold it up. Managed to get it moved on people, So I had a bit of a break for a year or so. Then there was a pub in Stonehaven that came up for sale in 2002. So I got myself in there and bought the pub in there, and kept that for 7 years or so, So and eventually sold that. Belhaven, don't think I mentioned.
You don't need to mention him, Joe. That's fine.
And they came in and they bought it off me. I leased it back for a couple of years, but I decided it wasn't working. I'd had enough. And since then, I've just been doing bits and pieces up until a couple of years ago, when actually, in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
and this was really relevant to me. I came down in the morning. It was the 14th of the 6th, 17, and switched the telly on and seen the pictures from Grenfell Tower, and it just really hit me quite hard, that. And there's a silhouette picture of Grenfell with the black smoke coming out of it.
Yeah.
And I just thought, God, that reminded me so much. Though it was so different, it reminded me so much of Piper Alpha. And when you heard the stories about how people escaped, and how they were told to stay in their accommodation, and some people ignored that advice, and they got out, Some people ignored the advice as well and probably never got out,
Yeah.
And then you hear about all the stories about the people who had been complaining about the safety, how they were ignored with their safety pleas over the years, and then they all come out about the cladding that was on the thing, and it'll be really interesting to see how that public inquiry comes out in the end, and whether it's as forthright as Lord Cullen's inquiry was at the end, There was certainly people that should be held accountable there as well,
And is that one of the driving things that's got you into speaking as a safety impact speaker then, Joe? Seeing that incident and it bringing back the memories of Piper Alpha?
Yeah, very much so. And I hadn't really thought about it at that time, but then for the 30th anniversary, I'd done a little bit for Grampian TV and done an interview. And through a friend of a friend, whose brother had a bad accident, a bad fall in Paisley, she told me that this is what he'd done for a living now, as a safety speaker, and motivator, and put me in contact with Gary, and myself and Gary Moore and me put a PowerPoint presentation together for me, and I've went out and put it forward and had quite a bit of interest, mostly from oil companies, but I did do one for Tenants Caledonian earlier this year, their safety day. They had 4 different things going on at the same time, but I was part of it, So yeah, it's been really interesting and great to meet so many different people, and just quite enthused by everybody at the way these companies take you in, and their safety culture and promotion seems to me to be all going in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other companies out there that if they don't have you coming, there must be some ones that aren't so good now, but hopefully,
The ones that are engaging with you are definitely doing a good job.
Yes.
And that brings us on to Joe. You come highly recommended from the Safer Than Your Average podcast. Joe's story, we've only just scratched the surface with it. He can go into a lot of detail about it. And if you want to get in touch with Joe, I'll put his LinkedIn address and his email in the links for the podcast to let you get in touch with them if you want to bring them in to do a talk with your operatives. And what a powerful story it is for the operatives as well. So I just want to sum up there, Joe. Thank you very much for getting involved in the podcast. You're one of the bravest guys I've ever spoken to. After coming through all of the experiences that you've had, a question that I normally ask on the podcast is, what advice would you give to someone starting out in health and safety now, with all the life experience that you've got?
Well, I mean, I think it's a tough job, but I think you've got to, stay true to yourself, but communicate with everybody, whether management and your workers, and and just try to be honest and forthright as much as you can. And at the end of the day, if anything untoward goes, that you've stuck by your guns, and you'll come out of it, with a clear conscience and that, and it'll be, because the biggest thing I found through Piper and that, it's the people that survive, no survivors, but it's the survivors of the people that never made it, their relatives, their mums and dads, or their brothers and sisters, or specifically with Piper, it was all men, and the sons and daughters that that have lost their fathers, and that's the worst thing about these disasters, and any fatalities at work. It's tough for them.
And the offshore industry is very like the rail industry that I used to work in. It's a very close-knit family feel to the industry. When you're all sitting having a cup of tea in the tea shack, and you're getting a bit of banter back and forward, that is like a big extended family. So losing a lot of those people that were close with you and good friends, it's really, really strong.
Yeah, that's right, because you were spending 6 months with them,
Yeah.
a year, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. They were your close companions for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And you know a lot about everybody, know a lot about each other. Just to go back to what you said about always having a clear conscience and not walking by, we shared a story when we first started talking about putting this podcast together, and I showed you this, which is a little paperweight with some North Sea oil in it. And the story behind that is a good friend of mine that works in emergency planning in the nuclear industry, a guy called Colin Hargraves. Shout out to Colin if he's listening to the podcast. Gave us all one of these paperweights because we done a research project on Piper Alpha when we were at university together, and we studied it for almost 3 months and put a presentation. We done it as a group project, and the group of people that I've done it with, I'm still close friends with now, and they're still some of the best safety professionals that I've had the pleasure of working with across my career. He sent us all a paperweight and a little scroll, Colin, and said, you might be faced with challenges across your career, and you might have pressure applied to you and the opportunity to walk by, but we've all shared this experience learning about Piper Alpha and the trauma that both the people that were killed and the survivors went through after the event and during the event. Keep this on your desk, and if you ever feel that turning the other cheek or walking by, look at this and remind yourself why you do what you do. So I thought that was quite a wee poignant story just to sum up on.
Absolutely, Blair. Yeah.
And thank you very much for coming on the show, Joe. I hope some people get in touch with you and get you out there doing some presentations. As I said, we've only scratched the surface with Joe's story, and you can come out to any business, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an oil and gas business. It could be construction, rail, any other big business. Get them in, get them doing a talk for you. Thanks very much, Joe.
Thanks, Blair.
This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high risk and challenging filming and time lapse. covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.